Correct. Well, during the after. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3. That's the speaker, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Are you hearing us?
Okay, now you can see it.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm hearing someone. Was that you, Peter?
That was you. You're hearing yourself.
Peter, speak.
Hi.
There
Okay,
we
we hear you. I think we have overcome our technical barrier. And Peter, I was thinking that I might see you here, but you're there.
Yeah.
I am going to be pulling up things to just get.
A little too much.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a lot that's keeping me from traveling right now.
If you're not here for this meeting, you're in the wrong place. Peter, we do have a quorum. This is gonna probably be a little bit of a funkier presentation than normal, but if you want to take it from here.
Yeah, no, I'd like to call this meeting for the Lamoille Basin Water Quality Council on July 25th, 2024, open. So we'll start with welcome and introductions. We'll begin. I'm Peter Danforth, Chair of the Lamoille County Basin Water Quality Council and also District Manager for Lamoille County Conservation District. And I guess maybe people online will introduce first, and then we'll go to people in the room. That sound good?
Yeah, Peter, why don't, if you. I was gonna say, Peter, it's gonna help me just make sure that I have complete record of attendance. I can call out people,
Okay,
just,
that sounds
and
good.
then if there's anybody who I've missed. So, is Lauren online? No, Lauren? Okay, Megan? You wanna just introduce yourself?
I'm here, Megan, Lamoille
Oh.
County.
Is Ken Mink online? Ken is the rep for the municipal, one of the municipal reps. I don't know, I wasn't sure Ken would be here. Brad wanted to just.
Yes, Brad Holden, representing Chittenden County.
Yeah, if you're not speaking, please mute. Peter, you are here. Christine Armstrong is a new member representing the water organization sector. Christine, could you say hello?
Good morning. My name's Christine Armstrong. I'm here as a new member. I was a founding member of the stewards of the Greensboro watersheds several years ago. I have a long time interest in water protection, so this is going to be a new learning task for me. So it'll be fun. Thanks. Thanks, Dean.
Thanks, Christine. Aaron.
Hi, I'm Erin DeVries from Vermont River Conservancy and I'm a voting member on the council.
Thanks, Aaron. I'm not sure if Brent Sheets is on. Brent, are you on? He is also a municipal sector rep. I am not hearing Brent. Joanne Hanowski, I don't believe is here. Sarah Muskin, who is an alternate from the Chittenden NRPC, I don't believe she is on. Richard Goff.
I'm here, I'm the alternate from the Lamoille County Planning Commission.
Thank you. Emily Finnegan is an alternate for the Conservation District. I don't believe she's here, or at least I can't see her. Is Emily here? Okay.
Lauren is. here.
Clarice.
I think Lauren just came on.
Lauren did just come on. That's great. I do see her. Lauren, if you are connected and you can hear us, do you want to just say who you are?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Weston. I manage the Franklin County Conservation District. I am using very spotty Wi-Fi, so we'll see how today goes.
Okay, and then I was just about, or I mentioned Clarice Cutler, who is an alternate. I think she might be here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Clarice Cutler, relatively new to Vermont Land Trust, but
Clarice.
happy to serve as an alternate.
Daniel Kenneman, who is with the Winooski Conservation District.
Hi, yeah, my name is Dan Kahneman. I'm the new district manager for the Winooski Natural Resources Conservation District. I've been in the job about a month, and I'm an alternate here.
I'm not sure if Mel from Franklin County Natural Resource Conservation District is here. I have her listed as a alternate to be, or alternate. I'm not sure that she's here. Okay, I'm Dean Pierce. I should have said that. I'm with the Northwest Regional Planning Commission, and we're the service provider for the Lamoille Basin. Sarah Gratz, who I work with, this is her last meeting providing support to the council. She's also here. I don't know if Sarah, if you want to say hello.
Hi, I'm Sarah, Eco over at NRPC.
Okay, and I do see a couple of other faces, and I think I'm just gonna let those folks, I see Tom Joslin and I see Karen Bates. So why don't you start, Tom?
I'm the Jericho rep on the Chittenden Clean Water Advisory Committee, and we have the Browns River is in the Lamoille Basin.
Thanks, Tom.
And I'm Karen Bates. I'm the DEC watershed planner and providing support to the BWIC and QUISP.
Is there anyone who we missed? I don't think we did. So Peter, that would help me confirm that there is a quorum and that you can carry on with the agenda.
Okay. Thanks, Dean. And again, I apologize if I'm not there. My driveway decided to finally give up last night. So I'm kind of caught here until it gets fixed tomorrow. In any case, meeting protocols. Yeah, I got them right here. So I'll just go over the list here. So introductions of all participants at each meeting. We've done that. As possible, BWIC members should have in their Zoom name and title, the name, organization, voting or alternate, and pronouns if desired. BWIC members are expected to have cameras turned on during the entirety of the meeting as technically possible. BWIC members are expected to stay focused and avoid multitasking and follow the guidance of, if you wouldn't do something in an in-person meeting, don't do it in a virtual meeting. And then BWIC members will use the raise hand function on Zoom to indicate request to speak. Come off mute. This is an effort to make sure we are all heard in turn. All members will stay muted until called upon if needed. QUISP staff may mute participants to avoid background noise. Any comments made in the chat will be read aloud at the appropriate time by QUISP staff in full for the public record. Okay, that's the Zoom norms. And now we have a discussion of conflict of interest declarations, if there are any.
I was just going to say this is for new folks. This is a standing agenda item that we have. It is basically a reminder to people at the start of a meeting. If this was a meeting where the council was voting on applications, it would be a reminder to someone who is an applicant to just say, hey, I'm an applicant, and later in the meeting, as the process requires, I won't be voting on my own application. There's nothing like that today, but we just keep it on the agenda as a reminder. So I don't know that there's anybody who would have any other reason to declare a conflict of interest today.
I have a question. Where can we find that conflict of interest policy? Is that on the website?
So it's on the network, I know, but
Okay.
it is not the conflict of interest policy. The bylaws have a section that addresses conflict of interest.
Okay.
And I'm drawing a blank on whether or not the bylaws are part of the website. They might be, and I'll take a look at that. But conflict of interest governing WIC members is a function of the rule. It's a function of something called the guidance documents. There's a specific chapter in the guidance book that DEC has created that has 10 chapters, and I believe it's chapter 6 or 7 or something that is conflict of interest. It's not long. So there are different sources that cover conflict of interest, but it's been clear from the statute and the rule that the council, and we'll talk about this more later, the council has 9 members, and when someone who has an application and who is also a council member, you have to recuse yourself from that vote. Now, some bodies will say if you have a conflict of interest, the thing to do is to leave the room. It's clear in the rule that the sponsor of an applicant, although they don't vote, stays in the room and can answer questions. So that's sort of a difference between the way this body, the Basin Council, operates, and one that's like a development review board, what's quasi-judicial, where you're just not supposed to be tainting the proceedings with your presence. It's nothing like that, but
Mm.
the rule is a place to look. The bylaws are a place to look, and the guidance document are a place to look.
Thanks, Steve.
Back to you, Peter, and the agenda.
Okay. Yeah, we have the agenda before us. Is there any questions or comments or edits that anyone sees that could be added at this moment? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
Sorry,
So
Peter.
moved. This is Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren. Do I hear a second?
Second, this is Erin.
Thank you, Aaron. I hear a second from Aaron. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, the ayes have it. Agenda's approved. Move on to the minutes. Have people had a time to look at the minutes? Do we have anything to add or correct? I'm not really, do you have the minutes before us? Dean, it looks like you just have the introductory panel.
Are you able to see this?
I only see the panel that says minutes.
Okay, sorry.
There we go. Okay, so we have the minutes from the last meeting before us. Anyone have any questions, concerns, or edits?
I'll just note I'm abstaining. This is, I was not at the last meeting.
Okay.
To approve the May 23rd, 2024 Basin 7 meeting minutes. This is Erin.
I'll second that, Megan.
Okay, Aaron, did you just, I couldn't really hear you. Did you just make a motion to approve it?
I did, yeah.
Okay, all right, I recognize Aaron's making a motion, and who seconded?
Megan,
Megan, thank you, Megan, for seconding that. All in favor of approving the minutes as they are, say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. And then Lauren, abstention. Great, ayes have it. Okay, public comment. Do we have someone from the public who wishes to comment? Okay, hearing none, I guess we'll move on to the next agenda item. Report on budget adjustments as needed. I'll pass that to you, Dean.
yeah, Peter, just again, for people who are new to the Basin Council, this is an item that we have on the agenda on a regular basis or on an ongoing basis. It provides a space for staff and the chair and the vice chair to report on whether they've done a budget adjustment. So I'll step back a little bit and say the Basin Council some months ago adopted a policy that allows for some organization that has received a grant, an award to do a project, to ask for an adjustment to that budget. And there's a stepped process, and I wasn't thinking I would go into great detail, but I'd be happy to talk to anybody offline to get into it. But under that policy, staff is able to provide, when it's convinced there's a reason, a rationale, it's able to provide a 10% increase in a budget So the council approved the project originally. For whatever reason, the recipient says, I need an increase. Staff can approve up to 10%. Staff plus the chair and the vice chair can approve up to 20%. But anything larger than that must come back to the council. And long story short is that there was one budget adjustment that just happened yesterday that under the policy, I should say, when there's an administrative approved adjustment, so the staff is authorized to provide it, but staff is also obligated to report that it did so at the very next meeting. So that's why it's here. So last night I made sure that this slide was in the packet or in the presentation so that I would be able to tell you today that yes, there was a budget adjustment approved through the policy. It happened yesterday. It was in response to a request from Lamoille County Conservation District. The project, and I realize that people are looking at the back or the side of my head. The project was the 10 bends buffer planting project. It was a $20,000+ project overall, and the request for adjustment was $2,000, which is less than 10%. And that authorization, that amount is within what is authorized to be approved by staff. It was reviewed by staff and it was approved. And that's what I'm reporting to you today. So when someone requests an adjustment, whether or not it's approved administratively, or it has to go to the chair and the vice chair, or back to the council, it's like it is at the very beginning. No increased money flows without an amendment in the task order. So the task order is like the contract. So there's also been a task order developed that would make that increase real. And the rationale, I'll briefly just say it had to do with a spreadsheet error in the application. And there was a number in the column that said, here's the amount requested. And that total didn't include some indirect. And so that error is essentially what's being fixed today. But it's again, within the 10%. So it's a report and you can answer questions about it if people have that. This is not a common occurrence, but it is something that happens on occasion. And it happens under a policy that was approved by the council. Any questions? Oh, I see you raise your hand.
Yeah, Dean, this was a project of ours. I just wanted to correct something. It's actually the Hyde Park preliminary design stormwater project for the post office, not the 10 bends. We were working on both of those at the same time, so I could see where that might have.
I was working on about 4 of them.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm cutting and pasting from too many documents. And if I showed you just how many windows were open on the computer that's beside me, it's not the one that you might understand. But it is.
And I'm sorry, I probably part of that problem. But yeah, just that's all that needs to change though is the project name on that adjustment panel.
Too many projects. Okay.
Thank you, by the way.
If not, then do you want to continue to?
Okay, yeah, we'll go on. Yeah, so next item is biannual organizational tasks, A, membership renewals and new appointments, B, seating of alternates.
So I'm just going to run through a few quick slides, brief and quickly. We were talking about this a little bit at the last meeting. And at that last meeting, I was explaining that because of language that was in one of these DEC guidance chapters, and I said it the last time, that it was a chapter that was adopted after the council was created more than 2 years ago. there was an obligation for the council essentially to reconstitute itself. And so we are doing that today. Today is the first meeting after the beginning of the fiscal year. So it's the date of the annual meeting. And so we are doing it in conjunction with the annual meeting, and we are following the DEC guidelines that says we have to do this. And some people may say, well, why do this? The bylaws adopted by the council originally were pretty simple. It talked about needing to elect the chair and the vice chair annually. And so there's like, you wouldn't have someone who's chair for life, but people could, you know, put their hat in the ring. But there wasn't anything about the organizations and the sectors, watershed organizations, conservation districts, land conservation organizations, municipal. There wasn't anything in the bylaws adopted by the council that said there has to be this re-examination. And so this re-examination comes about from guidance, and the guidance says that its goal is to make sure that there's a diverse membership on the part of the council and that it's representative. Okay, so or to recap, the council has to have 9 members, and those members represent certain sectors. And one of the sectors is the conservation district sector. One of those sectors is the regional planning commission sector. One of them is the local watershed organization sector. There's a land conservation sector, and there are municipal. So that's where the members come from. There are 9, and we try to have all of those seats filled, and we also try to have as many alternates. So this, with each person in a sector, we want to have an alternate in that spot so that they could vote when there's a recusal. So if someone from one conservation district does an application, ideally their alternate is from a different organization in the same sector. And so we're doing this today because there's this idea that this is going to help retain the diverse membership across the board. The way that this was done originally is that the sectors propose their representation, and we come together, we convene. It's not like there's an admission process. You're there as the representative. The thing that's a little different is that with alternates, it's just been the tradition of the council to acknowledge or to seat those folks. And that's something that we'll be doing momentarily. The slide that I hope are people seeing, did I not reshare? Am I sharing the?
It was fine before
Okay.
you did that.
Okay.
It looks good.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So taking what I said earlier, this table shows that up at the top in the Lamoille Basin, we have 2 spots for conservation districts, 2 spots a little below that, 2 spots for regional planning commissions, 2 spots for watershed protection organizations, and consistent with the law and the rule, 1 spot for land conservation organizations and 2 spots for municipalities. So in the left column are the reps, and many of you have continued from the first 2 years, and that's great, but some of you are new. I mentioned we introduced Christine Armstrong. Christine is from the same organization that Jed Pfeffer was a member for, and so he has stepped back, and Christine is the watershed protection organization sector rep. Joanne Hanowski continues to be the alternate. Just above that is the line that was previously represented by the Friends of Northern Lake Champlain. Kent Henderson has been a stalwart rep on, I think, 3 or 4 different basin councils. He's been everywhere. And he determined that he wasn't able to continue to serve in that capacity. And at the moment, there's no one from his organization who could have replaced him. So we do not have a representative of the Watershed Protection Organization sector that is previously represented by Kent and friends. But we're working on it. I can report that efforts are underway and have been underway, and we're having conversations with organizations whose names you would recognize. Along the same lines, the alternate for that position had previously been held by Lori Fisher from the Lake Champlain Committee. And like with Kent, Lori has determined that they're not able to continue in that role. So what this all means is that the law says these councils are to have 9 members. Right now we have 8, and we're working on finding a 9th. And that's something that, knock on wood, by the next meeting of this group, there will be someone who's been identified to fill that. Land conservation organizations, Aaron continues to rep. We do have some new names and faces who are on the alternate side. Clara is from the Vermont Land Trust, and she's a new face. And Remy, who is the same organization, is also, I should say that one of the strategies we're adopting since we've had a little experience is we want to have as many alternates as possible, because experience is showing that you can never have too many alternates. I'll just say in closing that on the municipal side, Brent joined as a municipal rep fairly recently. That's the lowest line. Just above that, Ken had been an alternate to Sarah had in that line. Sarah has had to step back from her commitments, and she'd asked to become an alternate, and Kent had indicated his willingness to switch and to become. Now, there was also a second alternate who is no longer able to serve, Catherine Sonic. So that is the makeup of the Basin Council for the Lamoille River Basin as of July 2024. And I guess I want to say that concludes things. I don't know that there's much discussion other than perhaps that people who are new wanted to say anything more about themselves that they didn't have a chance to say when they were first introduced.
Dean, I think Brent, she's just joined us.
Okay, so
Brent.
I do see Brent.
Hello, sorry for the delay, guys.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I will just say this briefly, that I had a momentary lapse because I also got an email introducing another person named Brent who has an administrative position in Lamoille County. And I conflated the two briefly, and then I got over that confusion, and then I thought, well, what are the odds of 2 people named Brent serving as the administrators or managers in 2 adjoining communities, right? Like, what are the odds? Anyway.
There's several Brents here. It's shocking because I know the North Hyde Park volunteer fire department chief is Brent, and then I've dealt with a contractor named Brent. So, and then Morrisville's new city manager is Brent as well. So there's a lot of them around here.
That's who I was confused by briefly, Brent Raymond.
Yeah.
So pardon my little diversion there.
Dean, can I ask a question? I'm curious, I'm just looking at the municipalities and thinking about Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, and like besides Hyde Park, which is like here, basically down the street, like a lot of them are more in that northern part of the basin. Are you looking at watershed protection organizations that are on the like upper Lamoille basin or, municipality, maybe like Hartwick or?
So in terms of watershed protection organizations.
Well, both actually, just like
Yeah.
looking at like spatially, like where people are coming from. Yeah, it's a lot of like, well, besides Greensboro, under the watershed protection. Organization, looking
Yes.
at municipalities and also that vacant position for watershed protection.
Yeah, so I'll talk about municipalities first. Yeah, we're trying and we did email blasts to as many communities, but my experience is that usually some kind of personal contact makes the difference between someone just staying on the sidelines or saying, hey, I might be willing to do that. But yes, it would be, I mean, if there was someone from Hardwick or one of the upper communities that was interested and willing, that gets further and further from my home base, but it's still within, striking distance of Lamoille. But we also have worked with NVDA because some of the uppermost communities, and so we would be happy to hear from those folks, but we haven't so far. As far as the watershed protection organizations, the watershed protection process involves coordinating them, and there's a definition of watershed protection organization, and although the organization known as Watersheds United Vermont, WUV, WUV has just traditionally played a convening role. And so we have been having the conversation with Lynn Munno in an attempt to find people. There are not watershed organizations that closely meet the definition or ideally meet the definition in large number in the Lamoille. So what that means is that you get from this definition and you start to look at different sides of that. And maybe on one side of that is lake associations, and more my experience, more and more lake associations have gone from being campers associations to having a bigger view. So in my mind, there are lake associations, at least a couple of them that I can think of, that could very well serve that role if they were interested. They haven't expressed that interest, but the other organizations on the other side they're not watershed protection organizations, but they might be a river or a trout unlimited, so they may be statewide, or they may be for central Vermont or something like that. And that's the organization that we're hoping, maybe Trout Unlimited or Central Vermont Trout Unlimited, I think, maybe they would be willing to move in. But I will say that when the council was first created, finding the second watershed organization, finding watershed organizations in Lamoille was not an easy task. Because the Friends of Northern Lake Champlain's focus is not the mouth of Lamoille or Lower Lamoille. They've done projects in Lamoille, but it's not like their bread and butter. So we would entertain that, and we're working with WUV to try to find those people.
Probably doesn't fit the definition, but the Lamoille River Paddlers Trail folks are a really great group of volunteers, and they're the Lamoille River Paddlers Trail, so it's like the Lamoille River, and they're specifically like focused in Johnson right now. I mean, like on projects, but they go all the way up to, projects that they have are in Fairfax. I don't know beyond that. There's the dam, but
yeah. So the organization name is great, and if there are people who you've worked with, and if you can do an introduction, that would be great. There's a way to tie it together.
Okay. Thanks.
So if there are no more questions, then Peter, maybe we move on.
Yeah, I had just a clarification, Dean. So yeah, the Trout Unlimited is the Champlain Valley Trout Unlimited chapter.
Sure.
And also, I agree, Lamoille Paddlers Club would be a good selection too if they, if TU doesn't want to take that role, and I need to reach out to them anyways as well. So I could try to help in that.
Thanks, Peter. Are we ready for this?
Yep. Annual meeting tasks, election of chair, election of vice chair.
So today, the bylaws say we have an election. This is done somewhat informally. There was no nominating committee created at the last meeting. There should be separate meetings for the chair and the vice chair. Because, Peter, if you are standing for election, you may not want to run things, and if you don't want to run things, then I can continue to run them until there's a vote held. But before we go really too much further, I also want to say that as a result of the fact that Sarah has moved from being a representative to an alternate, alternates can't be officers. They're not officers. The officers are drawn from the representatives, and there's no automatic elevation of the person in that seat to be the alternate. So there will need to be someone identified. I would hope someone would be identified today as part of a nomination to serve in the vice chair role. And then, like I was saying, if someone nominates Peter, then he may not want to run the election, but then when that election's done, Peter.
Yeah, Dean, just go ahead and take over the selection process.
Okay. Are there any nominations for the position of chair for the coming year for the Lamoille Basin Council? And I would just say if names come up, then the person named may want to just indicate if they're willing to be considered in that position. I think there's some understanding that things will go a particular way, but.
Brad Holden, I would like to nominate Peter Danforth as chair.
I second that nomination. Do you need a second for that?
Well, I think
We
that,
need to call for other nominations.
yeah, I was gonna say, I would continue with asking, well, let's first confirm, Peter, that you haven't had a change of heart and that you're willing to consider this opportunity.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with continuing, but I'm also equally as comfortable if someone else wants to take the role. But I appreciate the support. Thank you.
Are there any other nominations for the position of chair for the Basin Council for the coming year?
I think Daniel's had his hand up for quite a while, just so you know.
Oh, sorry, Daniel.
No issue. Just, I know alternates can't hold a position. Do we vote when it comes time to vote for this?
So the people who would vote today are the people who are counting for a quorum. And so you're not gonna need to be voting because you're not counting for a quorum today. And I'm just gonna get my little cheat sheet here. So people counting for a quorum: Lauren, Megan, Brad, Peter, Christine, Aaron. Yeah, so those are the people who are voting.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other nominations for the position of chair for the Lamoille Basin Council for the coming year? If not, does anybody want to move closing the nominations? Maybe I should leave it to my parliamentarian.
Sure. I don't know if that's correct procedure or not, but
You could make a motion to direct the secretary to cast a.
yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
exactly.
We don't need to, yeah.
Yeah, you would say, I guess you would say if there's no further nominations, nominations are closed.
Yeah, if there are no further nominations, then nominations are closed.
And then I would move to have this authorize the secretary to cast one ballot on behalf of nominating or electing Peter Danforth as chair. So we need a second.
Yeah, but we don't have a secretary. That's the one problem.
Oh, okay, that's a problem.
Let's
Let's go for the vote.
I know, let's just go for the vote. All in favor of electing Peter to continue his service as chair, please say aye.
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 Hi.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. And Peter, you can take things from here and help us navigate the election of a vice chair.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was hoping you continue with it. But that's all right. I can take over. So we do need to select a vice chair. And so I suppose what we need to do is have some people volunteer to nominate someone for that position. So I'm going to leave that open right now. Do I hear a nomination for vice chair?
And
To like the.
Yes, yes,
our-
yes.
Our members, just because I'm trying to remember everyone's name.
That's a good idea. It's tough. It's a lot of good folks here.
Peter, I'm not sure I heard what you said, if that was you.
I just said I was joking. It's tough. There's a lot of good folks here. Tough selection. Spin the wheel of fortune.
Okay, I'm gonna, go out here. I don't know Brent very well, but I think the one or two meetings that I've been at, I think you'd be a great, vice chair. And I also feel it's really important to have someone from a municipality be, an elected officer, because of the nature of our work. And so I elect Brent Sheets. I hope he's not gonna like come and find me. Brent as the vice chair. Is that how I do that? Or I ask him, I don't know. What do I do?
Peter's running.
Oh, I'll take on a challenge. I mean, that's fine with me. I'm very humbled by the mention. Yeah, I'll assist Peter in any way, shape, way, or form to continue to move forward. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would say I'm supportive if someone wants to nominate Brent. Brent being also new to the area, it'd be a good way to kind of get you in and involved in this sort of concrete way as well.
Oh no, again, I appreciate it.
Okay, so Aaron, that was you that nominated Brent?
What did you say? I'm sorry.
With her motion.
Was that Aaron that?
Okay.
Do I hear another nomination for Brent? Or another person?
I'll second that motion. Megan?
Okay, Megan, thank you. Do we want to go ahead now and just, unless we hear any other nominations, do we want to hold a vote on having Brent as vice chair? Do I hear a motion?
I think.
How's that
the
working? I'm sorry.
protocol, you can disclose the nominations, and if you're ready for that vote, I think that's.
Okay. All right, we'll just do the vote because the nominations are the motions. So yeah, sorry. Yeah, so all in favor of having Brent Sheets as the vice president for the Lamoille Buick,
Aye.
say aye. All opposed, say nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I believe the ayes have it. Brent, congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yay.
All right. What else we got, Dean?
Okay, so we've handled the election. So this next section of the meeting, and I realize we're an hour in, is something that builds on some earlier discussions. It's on the agenda as relating to a proposed project development funding proposal. So I'm just going to run through some slides and try to set the stage. And I think there could and should be a fair amount of discussion that will determine whether or not anything and anything happens. So the background for this is that we're responding to the push that DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation, which is through which this funding that we can access comes from. But they've been encouraging groups like basin councils to increase the amount of funding they provide for what's called project development. It's project development is a phase within this process of getting projects from an idea to completion. So we're responding to that. We'd had conversation last time about it, and we weren't sure where it would lead, and in the time since, where it has led us is to the point where we're at today that I'll talk about. I will say that one of the factors that helped determine that we as WISP staff would propose this as an agenda item was something that the basin that serves northern Lake Champlain, which is known as Basin 5, were responding to something they did. So Basin 5 has done its own response to this push to increase the amount of funding that goes out for project development, but we're not doing the same thing. So we've adopted their idea. So I just wanted to refresh people's memories that we had said, project development has been eligible from the very beginning, but it hasn't been used. DEC is pushing. It is not, it's not the be all and end all to every problem. There's a definition of project development. There's a clarifying document about it but anyway, it didn't strike us as the perfect vehicle for addressing all of the ills that really some of the concerns that were identified through the Clean Water Summit that was back at the beginning of May or in April. But we had said we might consider something like a dedicated call for applications. But anyway, I wanted people to have their memories refreshed that this was not like an easy topic to address. But again, with the passage of time, seeing what the other Basin 5 has done, and also just considering some of the advice that's been offered. There's a technical project manager from DEC who has said, essentially that QUISPs and WICs could set up grant programs where they're, giving money to the partner organizations. And so this is kind of our take on that. This is what's differentiating what we'll be asking you to consider. But the basic idea is that take $50,000 of the $650,000 that's part of each annual allocation for the Lamoille, roughly speaking. So take 50,000 and say that, okay, we'll make $5,000 grants available for up to 10 entities. Okay. And the idea is that this will be, when it comes time for an entity, a partner organization to use it, we want it to be simple. We want it to be expedited. And yeah, we want to make it less of a hassle because we have found that some of this process is a hassle. But to make this idea real is going to mean that the Basin Council approves a couple of motions. And that's what I'm going to walk people through after showing you this graphic. Just the big steps are the Basin Council creates a program. Next step is the Basin Council pre-approves project developments for recipients. And then the QUISP will have the ability to go to those partner organizations and say, do you want it? The program's been created. There's been an allocation approved. So we take care of this technical requirement that says the Basin Council has to approve projects and nothing can be spent until they do. But we will go to them and say, hey, do you want to do something with this? And then we process this. If they say yes, then we work with them and we process things as quickly as possible to make the money available to them. Now, there's a part of this that involves getting project identification numbers, and that's just one of those things that we have to do. And that's going to be wrapped up into this, but those are the major steps. And so after we've been talking and thinking about this at the QUISP, and I realize this is really tedious, so bear with me. So the first motion would authorize the creation of the program, okay, and set some basic parameters. And as I said, it would be $50,000 in the funds to create a general project development program. And also, because there's this technical thing, we just also make it clear that this is becoming part of the basin. If you want to do this, you include the language that says the Basin 7 project solicitation process is hereby amended to include this. We don't want someone saying, oh, you didn't do it as part of your process. Well, we're saying we're making this part of the process. That would create the program, and we would deal with, we would address or preemptively address any concern about, is it part of the process or not? So then, as you know, this is a god-awful motion, but as part of the program, new task awards would be issued by the QUISP to the pre-qualified partners for project development initiatives that are consistent with DEC requirements and is clarified by the motion to be made following this one, because I knew it couldn't all be one motion, but it also couldn't be 10. But it's telling the world that the Basin Council would say that yes, task awards would be issued to partner organizations. We're going to follow the rules and so on. And then upon the adoption, the QUISP staff, that's us, we would solicit project development requests. We'd say to the partner organizations, here's a simple form. If you want to use it, that's something that the Basin 5 folks did. And then we would say, okay, what's the idea and what is the request for the project identification number going to say? And when those things fall into place, then we can start to work up the award and actually make it happen. Now that's the first motion. I do want to just, you know, preview the second one, because that's creating the program. It's done somewhat generally. And the second motion is really to drive home the point that the council is saying, you know, we're doing this kind of blind, but we're approving this, we're approving projects when we as the Basin Council say that we're doing this program and creating this opportunity. We're doing it for these somewhat abstract project development projects, and you're approving them. And we want the record to be able to show, someone would say, I have moved that in furtherance of the prior motion. We hereby approve the following separate general project developments by each holder of a master agreement. So the master agreements, there are 9 entities that have master agreements that have gone through the pre-qualification process that are teed up to do this. So we would have to amend it later if there are more, but someone would be saying that we're approving individual project development projects for those up to $5,000. Now, the next bullet is simply saying something that the Act 76 process allows is that the QUISP itself can at times act like a project developer. And so the second bullet is to say, just like because the QUISP doesn't hold a master agreement with itself. So I can't say just the master agreements because that would exclude the NRPC. So the second bullet is there. If the group agrees, it would say that yes, like the other 9, the NRPC would be eligible up. And then the next line says, but no one's under an obligation to do this. This is just trying to create the steps. And then it's also, the very last part is preemptive. It's saying that as QUISP staff and putting together all of this material, we've deemed this to have been worthy. We're saying it's preliminarily evaluated and it's worth the BWIC's action. So that's the idea. And I'll try to close by saying that the Basin 5 Council essentially did the first part. They created a program, and I made the motion, and I thought that was going to be more, and and I do see your hand, Peter, and I'm just about to.
No problem.
So there was a motion adopted by the Basin 5 Council on which I sit. So I sit in your role there. And we thought essentially that everything that was needed, some of us thought that everything that was needed to be done for grant awards to be issued was done, but that wasn't everyone's understanding. So they had to move forward with individual applications. So the Basin 5 Council doesn't want to make it as far-reaching as what we're suggesting. They think they need to have every partner application come back. Now, if this council feels the same, that's fine. But with the conversations that we've had, we're attempting to make it unnecessary for a partner organization to have to come back once this program has been created. So that's the last thing I'm going to say. Peter, your hand is up.
Yeah, no, this looks great, Dean, by the way. I just trying to put this in a nutshell, if possible, and correct me when I'm wrong. I feel like, so there's funds available for 9 groups, for a total of 50,000, 5,000 each, that is pre-approved by the BWIS. And that it's a rolling sort of thing. And that essentially you're just having to create a project ID for that project development and have that agreed upon with the QUISP, and you're set to go. So in other words, it's pre-approved. We don't have to continually go back every other month to get a program development project approved by the BWIS because it's already been pre-approved. Is that correct?
Yeah, in a nutshell, that's what it is. And you caught something in the text that I didn't mention, and that is the idea that it's annual. So that, yes, it's a program. It's our view that if DEC says, get this money out and make it available, that this is the way to make it available with the least friction and hold up for the partner organization. So yeah, it wouldn't mean coming back. It would really essentially be the council has said, for these kinds of things, this is small potatoes. Just go off and do it as long as the DEC project number is given and the contract is in place, go for it. And that's what this is attempting to create.
No, it's really good. I think. It oftentimes is hard to delineate program development because we have so many different grants that do that in some level or another. But this one, if it's done in this structure, it would be a lot easier to navigate. And it seems like it's broad. I can see this being really helpful, especially if groups, watershed organizations or districts are looking at say a river, the Lamoille, for instance, and IDing buffer or floodplain restoration projects, right? So you could group, the IDing and the development of those programs for a year much more easily with this funding. So this is really good. And I'm going to be doing one for the Winooski. I'll probably be doing one for the Lamoille as well. Anyways, I'm going to stop now.
Peter, I have a question. I don't know if you can see my hand.
Yeah, you can just speak up a little bit. If that's Aaron, I've been having a hard time hearing you.
Yes.
Swing it towards you.
Okay. So this is Erin DeVries, and 2 questions. One, so I heard annual, but then I thought I saw maybe in one of the slides that there'd be 3 to 4 times per year up at the comments above. So to simplify it even more, or to make my question really simple, would that those project implementers or those what do we call them, pre-qualified partners, would they get $5,000 for 1 year, or could it be 3 to 4 times a year they request $5,000 for project development?
Okay. So the 3 or 4 times a year is in reference to the fact that the way things are right now,
Yep.
it happens 3 or 4. It started as 4, now it's 3.
Yep.
So we're amending that
Okay.
to say that in addition to that, now 3 times per year, if this vote takes place,
Yep.
it's alongside that. So it's an annual, well, it happens on an ongoing basis. The idea would be that the $5,000 would be $5,000 that are in play for an organization in that year. So
Okay.
an organization would be able to say, okay, it's September 1st, and I want to go get some of those funds if this is approved. And they would sign an agreement that's up to $5,000 for a particular piece of work.
Okay.
They would be eligible for another 5,000 1 year later.
Okay.
So it's not that they apply 3 or 4 times and
Okay.
get it times 3 or 4. It's that they're gonna have access to the funds in this way at least once a year. And the thing I would say is that this process doesn't preclude anybody from doing things the old way. So if someone says, no, I got a project development effort, but it's $25,000, well, we would just use the normal process for that.
Sure, sure. Okay. And then my second question, if you could go back up to your graphic. It was,
This would.
yes, please. The second circle there, Basin Water Quality Council pre-approves project development projects for each potential recipient.
So that's,
Tell me more.
that's what this is. So it's this abstract, project development is a somewhat amorphous thing.
Yes.
But it is that the council is saying that you are calling this potential for 10 projects,
Mhm.
those 10 projects.
Got
And
it.
you would be saying yes to them.
Okay. There's just a lot of projects and program and people.
Yeah.
That was confused. Okay, I got it.
Oh, Peter, I see Brent, but your hand is up too, so you're the chair.
Well, Brent, if you want to go first, that's fine. I've already been speaking a lot, but I just had to go ahead.
Oh, I didn't have my hand raised. I was agreeing with the conversation on that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry to keep coming in on this conversation, but I do have something I want to ask, a hypothetical. And if, say, there's 2 organizations, each with $5,000, but essentially they're interested in the same area and the same development, can both of them apply with basically for the same area and the same development concept? So in other words, say the River Conservancy in Lamoille County, we're looking at a stretch of river and they want to ID projects together. Could that they're combined for, so in other words, it'd be 2 different program development grants, but in other words, there'd be $10,000 there directed towards an area with the same language. I'm just curious how that would fly.
So Karen's on this meeting, and she may want to chime in, but I will just say that some of the reason for all of this is it's an accounting reason. It's to be able to track the expenditure of funds, types of work. My gut reaction to if those 2 organizations are looking at doing work in the same area, that what it means is that there would be a coordinated effort. When they go to Karen, they would say, here's this area, but give us one project number for this X aspect, or the aspect that organization X is going to focus on, and give us this other project number that is for the aspects of the work that organization Y is going to focus on. So they can both do the things, but it's clear that they're not, I mean, we don't want to have people, we don't want to spend money twice.
Yeah.
But we also don't want to discourage people doing things cooperatively. But Karen, do you have any thoughts on that? But that's, to me, a way that the problem could be resolved. It's by going into the request for project IDs together and getting it coordinated.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly see the ability to have different roles because the project development category covers a wide range of tasks. I'm thinking this through too. The one thing that would be interesting is then outcomes. So everybody does a post-project report and basically identifies the specific project that might come out of that. the child project, let's say. So let's say, the Roy property, river riparian planting is an outcome of it. Then what would happen is, how would one group report on the outcome? Because that project is given a watershed projects ID, and the other group report on it, but basically let us know you don't need, it's already going to be given a watershed projects ID number. So that's where it would be interesting. But I think that would be the only thing to really look out for, is the output or the outcome.
Yeah, I was thinking, Karen, in a sense, like a divide and conquer element. In other words, you're looking at a section in which, you have a couple organizations that are looking at, and then they could amongst themselves coordinate where they're going to focus their efforts. And
Yes.
and then those efforts would be different projects in the same area. That's what I'm talking about. So you can actually get more bang for the buck, so to speak, because you're all kind of coordinating.
Oh yeah,
And
no, that sounds great.
that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And
not talking about having us all the same project and then one deciding who, I mean, there could be a little bit of that, like, okay, I'm going to take this, but you know what I mean? Like, we're really trying to broaden the project base.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And then the outcomes would be very, very specific. I think what's important is in the project description that it be unique enough so that somebody looking at all the project development projects in the area could say, oh, well, they actually haven't worked in this town to identify riparian buffers, or this is a riparian buffer project or identification project in this town, but Lamoille County NRCD has already worked here, so I know to work with them first, just so people have so I think that's the only thing, is to make it clear, make it easy for people to follow up on other people's work, because they know exactly where they were working and what the outcomes were, and knowing that people aren't knocking on the same door twice. Or
Yes. Yeah. And I think that would help coordination. So if
Yeah,
two groups were
exactly.
actually going for the same area, like, hey, let's do program development grants in conjunction, and we'll just figure out where we're going to be working and on the similar projects. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, having the QUISP sort of coordinate that, then it is very helpful, because then they can make sure that that's happening. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
So that's the idea. Peter, I don't know if you can see Megan.
Yes. Megan?
So I fully support this idea. I'm just wondering, I mean, do we really, like, when we initiate the project development task order or agreement, do we really need a watershed ID for just initiating that agreement or overarching focus area? Or can we just have the watershed IDs developed as we have more concrete projects? Because usually you're putting in more specifics about a project.
You're here, 100%.
So Karen maybe I should let Karen start. But
Yeah. So the two categories are that you have the specific project and you're just trying to push it forward, or you're just, as you've talked about, you're in an area and you're just looking for projects. But what we want to know is, what area are you looking at? What type of projects do you want to be defined? There's a whole list of what should be put into the project description for project development type. And so we need that to know that people aren't, walking over the same area. And then we can also help document where the money is going to what area before the outcome is provided. So what we're talking about, Megan, I think, is that when you find the specific projects, that then is your outcome. And so then you'll put that in that Excel report where you provide very specific information about who who the landowner was, what their opinion was about the project, barriers, incentives, just all the information that somebody would need to then take that project and say, oh, now I want to take this project and move with it. So you out of that general project, you get multiple projects that then will be assigned water project IDs as well. There'll be child projects of the parent project. The parent project will be the project development.
So Karen, my understanding, I think I could sense where Aaron and Megan are coming from, and I'll tell you what the QUISP, I'll address where the QUISP is coming from. It's my understanding that even for the general work, there will need to be a number, and that's part of the issue. So one of the things that the QUISP, I don't know if that's a subtlety that's easily found, or maybe it's in the background to what ended up being in the motion. But if the QUISPs are able, so one of the things that if motions like this were adopted, we would then go to Karen and we'd say, Karen, is there any way in the world that we can create a series of watershed project IDs that are general and generic, that can be the number that's used with the award? And if there's any possibility of that, then we're going to pursue it. It may be that there isn't the possibility, but if there is the possibility, it's like if we can get those pre-approved, we in the QUISP land dream of that ability to have these generic numbers that could serve as the placeholders for that first step. I get that where Karen's coming from, it may not be possible, but that's something that we as QUISP have talked about, have thought about, and maybe talking more about as soon as this meeting is done, to make it easier. That way you just know that your 10,000 is going to be, or your amount, 5,000 is going to be tied to an existing number, if that's at all possible, but we don't know if that's possible.
Well, so first, the ID that I think that the premise of this is that it's complicated to get the watershed project's ID number. And if that's the case, it's not, it's just, you need to follow the requirements that are set out in the SOP, and we can make that easier. Because project development is wide open for a lot of different things. It's hard to say that's not a project development type of project. So it helps to document, what somebody's doing in a way that's easy to compare to another project. Let's see. And you as a QUISP, if you were to take this on, and let's say you were just to have one number for project development projects in the Lamoille, how do you organize it so you understand, okay, Peter's going to be looking for riparian plantings on the Lamoille River, whereas, Aaron's going to be looking for river corridor easements. You write that somewhere. So we're just saying, yeah, you're going to write it anyway. Why not give it a separate number so we can follow it in a database? And we know as well that Aaron's doing easements and Peter's doing riparian plantings in that area. And that anybody could then look at our water projects database and say, oh, well, I'd like to do some work in the Lamoille for project development. And they can say, oh, there's already a project ID for riparian plantings. I want to look into that further and see if there are any child projects.
Yeah. So from the QUISP perspective, we understand, because I said a while ago that part of the reason is accounting. And so the numbers are for the accounting, and they help keep the different types of work on the different types of projects separate. I can understand why we would need to do that, but I can also understand that from the partner owner's perspective, they would just love to be able to say, can I use this? Can I just attach this number and be off, and maybe the accounting can happen? And I don't know if we'll ever get there, but I understand the desire, which is why we've said if there's some way we can navigate this, and I don't know if it means that we all get together and we kind of like pre-generate the numbers really prospectively, and we then get them in so that you don't have to worry about them. I don't know what the answer is, but our feeling is that if there's something like this created, then it gets us that much closer.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that that could make sense is that, I mean, let's see, it's a very, right. So if it's just projects in Lamoille, that's the QUISP water project, WPD ID, right, is 3165. And so all the work that's being done, you don't know what sort of work is going to be done. You're going to basically just put it out to people, and people are going to come to you and say, oh, well, I'd like to look for river corridor easements, or I'm going to look in the town of Johnson for projects, or I'm going to, so it's like, you would have to keep track somehow of, well, who's doing what, so that they're not two people looking for buffer plantings in the town of Johnson, or at least they know to talk with each other about it. So you already have to do some organization around that to make sure there's not overlap. So why not just work with the the project database ID, or the watershed projects database, to organize those ideas. And I think that the issue there's been an issue in the past, as Aaron knows, that we're trying to figure out how the projects compare to each other, and that it's just really important to know how to describe the project so that we can compare them. But I think once that learning has happened, then it should be very easy to get a watershed projects database number. So I don't know why you do the work or we do the work, and figuring out what project what area, or how are you taking on, what chunk are you taking on for project development in Lamoille? We both have to ask that question and have a system for describing it, so that each group knows what the other group is doing, and we all know that nobody's stepping on another person's toes.
Peter, I have my hand raised. Thank you. I totally understand the accounting piece. I think we are getting lost in the weeds of coming up with numbers when it's very important to talk to your colleagues and work in collaboration in a physical form, meaning looking at people, looking at maps, rather than focusing on big broadly, like for Vermont River Conservancy, I'm going to not use the word project development. I'm going to use the word scoping. And that's what we do every single day. After this meeting, I'm going to basically drive along the Lamoille River, because I have looked at maps, physical maps, and seen places where I might want to do a river corridor easement, or work with a town to get FEMA money for floodplain restoration. So we're not just doing one thing, we're doing a variety of things through the scoping, which I would categorize, if we develop this program, as project development, right? Because there could be a dozen projects within the project development funds, if I were given those funds, $5,000, that could come out of it. And I would not be able to spend any time going into the watershed project database to then be able to describe what I'm scoping out. It's like, it's not possible. It's not like, that's why I don't do watershed project development IDs for a DEC master contract I have, because it's just purely scoping, driving, and talking to people. And there's no way I can put a project description together in order to get a watershed project database ID, which is a number and not a place or a person or a real actual like physical thing that I'd like to do. So I just.
Yeah, so Erin, so this is what I would see there. There would be the ID would be for river corridor easement projects in the Lamoille that you would be looking for through using, mapping and then discussing with people as the approach for doing that. I mean, that can be easy, an ID. And then if it's the entire Lamoille watershed, you put that down, that's what you're doing. So people know that you're doing that. You would have to do, so if that's what you would describe to the QUISP as well, if you went for their application, but that's what you only need to do that for the watershed projects ID as well. And then, but for the output, then you have to document, you found this property, you talked to these people, this is what they said about it. This is your next step. You have to do that for an outcome for either way. So, and then that then becomes, can get another watershed projects ID number, but you wouldn't worry about that. So I don't quite understand how it would be different whether you asked Dan for the number or to work under Dan's number or to get your own number. It's the only difference is that your application would go through an N form versus through Dan, but we'd be collecting the same amount of information, or we should be.
She means me.
Okay.
Yeah, Karen, I'm often called Dan by Karen.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Dean. Oh,
No, I'm used to it, Karen. It's all right.
it's okay. They call me Kathy all the time.
Letter E,
Okay.
Highly offended, but that's okay. No, that's good. No, I knew she meant me, and no, I could tell you that she meant me.
And you all know the issue now, or the potential. So anyway, yes, responses.
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know where you would like to go and how much more conversation that you would like to.
I would suggest maybe a conversation outside of this meeting in regards to that amongst the people with the questions, such as Aaron and myself, on these program development, problem development. I love it. Program development questions that we can. I do want to call my partners both within the Winooski and Lamoille, who I work with on similar projects soon, and maybe that could be the subject of our meeting, is this program development grant and how we should approach it. Aaron, do you think that's a good idea?
I like that.
Like we had one about a month ago or so. I think we should have another one and try to like sort of iron out what we're thinking about. And then Karen, you can be involved in this conversation as well. And Dean, for that matter. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I wanted to add is I love, as Aaron pointed out, it's good to get together with your colleagues and over maps and look at things. And I feel like having the QUISP take some coordination role there, just to make sure that a group is not forgotten, or that everything gets documented in a way that we can use it later, is a great idea. So I like the fact that the QUISP sort of organizes this. And
and I'm just
I'm open to that.
suggesting for the sake of time, that maybe this could be its own meeting. Not necessarily QUISP like direct related, but like program development related in general, and partner coordination in general. So we're not in any conflict of interest. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's more of like we're watershed groups get together to discuss potential areas to work in. Does that make sense?
The process, how we could support that process. Yeah. Yeah.
This is the public meeting.
And that would be a public meeting, that group that gets together.
So what that next meeting, I mean, if it's a QUISP organized.
Dean, I'm thinking this is more of a watershed group meeting that I'm discussing, like that doesn't necessarily have to do completely with just the program development funding, but that would be a topic of discussion. I just thought for the purposes of of, I don't know, like if, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't want it to be a conflict of interest meeting. In other words, having a QUIS meeting outside of a QUIS meeting with not everyone involved. It would be more of a meeting directed towards program facilitators and watershed groups that are just trying to coordinate in general. And then one of the subject matters of that meeting may be, oh, what are we going to do with these QUIS program development funds? How should we approach that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, Richard just had a question about whether it was a public meeting, and I wasn't sure what it was.
It would be a public, yeah, it could be a public meeting for sure.
But not a meeting of the board.
Not a meeting of the book. Yeah, I don't, no, I don't think that would be appropriate. Let me think about this for a sec, but I think what I'm trying to say is I've had meetings with watershed groups where we just were trying to coordinate. And one of the elements, the agendas on that meeting could be discussion of the QUIS funding, but not the entirety of the meeting. So it wouldn't be, you know what I'm trying to say, not a conflict of interest, as in we're not trying to exclude anyone from that conversation. And we'd try to invite in as many people as possible. It'd be basically like a Northwest Zone meeting or a, you know, a partner coordination meeting in general, basin planning coordination meeting. Maybe Karen, that could be a basin planning meeting, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm actually looking to see when our next meeting is, and I haven't found it yet. So I may need to send out a
I just don't want to create another QUIS meeting for you, Dean.
I appreciate that.
But you're invited.
I do it.
Yeah, so the partner coordination meetings that we have though with Karen they're not like a formal board or anything.
True.
They're not like warned like a regular public meeting, but it doesn't mean we couldn't reach out to, you know, like other Quest members or people who might want to be involved.
Yeah. All right, food for thought. I guess maybe we should just continue since it's about 10:40 almost. But I'll get back in touch with folks about ideas regarding this. Discussion and possible action.
So
Sounds appropriate.
to conclude, that was the final slide for the last topic. So if the idea is that this conversation will carry over to the next meeting, then that's fine, and we can just keep rolling on. And unless there's no motion coming, right?
Well, do we want to make a motion regarding those two motions? And as far as program development funding goes, is that an actionable item at this point? I would say it is, right?
Yeah, the idea was that it was a proposal. There are draft motions. They could be used. They could be set aside for other motions, or they could be set aside for more discussion and action at a later date.
Okay, well, I'd ask if there is any more discussion. I personally think that what you framed there makes a lot of sense. And I'd be willing, but I'm the chair, so, but I'd be willing to see if there is a motion to
I guess I just
pass these motions.
Hi, Peter. You can't see me probably, but I have a question, Brad.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of details in here that I don't quite understand, but all I want to know is this going to make things easier for people, right? Or are we just creating another? I've been involved in a little bit of this, trying to get a project number ID sort of thing, so I have very limited knowledge, but I know it's a very cumbersome process, and I just want to know, is this what's laid out here? Is it going to make it easier for the people to get some work?
I hope, because you're looking at me and I'm looking back at you, I hope it will make it at least incrementally easier, at least somewhat easier. And that's the whole reason that we're doing this. And when I say we, I mean the QUISP, and that's primarily, you know, result of consultations or conversations I have with Catherine Dimitra, because the executive director. But we are doing it with the belief that, you know, that's the goal. It'll make it a little bit easier to get the money out, and because that's what we're being told, try to do, get the money out.
Okay. And as far as I know, there's 10 recipients. everybody gets $5,000 annually. Whether they team up or not is their own.
Well,
is their own.
they'd have to, you know, the money, the contract, the task order doesn't get written and that they get the check without asking. So it's, there is the potential for that money, but they have to say, yes, we want the money and here's what we're going to use it for. And then we follow through with the task award, and that is what releases the money. Then they do the work and they get reimbursed, because these are all reimbursements. But it's creating the potential for that. And if it's done, then it doesn't have to be done again. That's the thinking. And it's making it, it's the whole reason for doing it, is to try to make it easier, because we think.
I'm just hoping that it truly is gonna make it easy, I guess.
Well, as you can
Well-
tell, there's a lot of, I mean, there are a lot of steps in the process, and we're only addressing one segment of that process called project development. You know, there are other battles to be fought for other days. I guess is the best way I can leave it.
And Dean, I'll just say your application process that you've created for a lot of these things has been a lot more simplified. So I would say, like, instead of having to compete statewide for project development funds, this actually is a positive step forward.
And this is
Karen?
Sorry, I just had to stand up. I'm freezing. It is so cold in here. I think with the QUIS help, the QUIS staff's help in simplifying the application process and helping us get one or more, just helping us through that watershed project database ID, the conversation we're just having, figuring that out for us will simplify and will reduce my frustration with the process that it currently is. So
100%.
I appreciate these motions and
Right, so I guess I would move, could we do this very easily, like to just say, so we have motion 1, motion 2. Can we combine that at all, you think, or is it appropriate to?
I think, Brad, you could just read the title of each motion if it's up there already, and that, you know, if you're gonna make a motion. And you don't have to go through the specifics.
Right, so I move to authorize the creation of a program and establish basic parameters as laid out in the meeting packet on page 22. And I also move to approve individual projects and create inventory of funding from which entities may draw. That is laid out on page 23.
All right, I hear a motion from Brad to approve these two motions. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Megan.
And
All right,
Peter,
and before I go to vote, Karen, you had your hand up.
Yeah, and maybe this is another, I would propose at the appropriate moment that we have some time during a BWIC meeting to talk about how to apply for or use the N forms. Because that might be part of the problem too, that we can find and then I could create a resource that could help people after that based on issues, questions. And Brad, where's Brad from? Brad, I'm sorry, you're
From the town of Underhill.
Town of Underhill. Okay. That's right. We've met.
We met on Range Road, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Karen, that's good. And just something a point too, and then I do the N forms often, but I remember in the beginning days of trying to figure it out, you can't actually look up N forms, just so anyone knows. That doesn't exist. You have to go to the DC or, you know, grants, is it Grant Solutions or grant online grant portal to get to them. So there is a little bit of a issue with people finding them. I just want to let you know, and this would be helpful.
Yep.
Peter, I just wanted to address one technical issue. Lauren lost connectivity.
Right.
And is no longer in the group, which means
Oh, we sure?
that Daniel, you are a voting person at this time because Lauren's
Right.
stepped away.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
So that was the motion, but was there a second? Yes.
There was a second motion. Who did the second?
Yes, thank you, Boo.
Megan.
Megan, thank you, Megan. Okay, so I've heard two motions. And any more discussion? Okay. You'll, would anyone, geez, sorry. Would I let, there's two motions. Can we, can I hear everyone in favor say aye for motion 1 and 2?
Aye.
Any nays? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Good job, Dean.
The remaining items, if we can just, keep roaring along, and I may move this computer here that I've been looking at back to my charger, but I don't need it to end the meeting. When the package and when the agenda was put together, I had an understanding of the status of the Regional Planning Commission's public participation plan, but as of yesterday in another meeting, I learned some things, so the progress of that has slowed. But if you can bear with me, so there is a requirement that the QUISP have a public participation policy and the BWIC have a public participation policy. And when the BWIC was created, it adopted a simple one-page, and we called it interim public participation policy. And there hasn't been a lot of discussion in this basin of this topic, but there has been in at least one other basin. But I believe in the packets you saw the text from that policy. It contemplated coming back at some point and developing a more robust public participation policy. Well, one of the things that had been happening or was anticipated off to the side was the creation of a public participation plan by the Regional Planning Commission. And that's the document that's been under development for the last year or so that I had reason to hope might be discussed at the Regional Planning Commission meeting that's happening next week and perhaps would be adopted. And that would be a resource for the Basin Council to consider updating its public participation policy into a final one or a more robust. So like I was saying, that slowed down. And so instead of that plan being almost ready for prime time and possibly serving as a source, it's going to take longer. And so really what the opportunity that's different today as of a week ago is that before too long, the Basin Council, for whoever's interested, may have the opportunity to review that plan and possibly be participating or providing comment on it should you want to. So this is a little bit of a reset. And I apologize that it's just something that was a bit of a curveball. So just to remind people, you had the package, the text in your packets, but it emphasizes public notice, transparency, accessibility, outreach to underserved community. Those are things in the interim policy that come straight from rule. And instead of having the Regional Planning Commission's plan, which would help take you from an interim policy to a permanent policy, that's not happening. But like I said, it may be something that you can participate in the draft review. So really, this is an abbreviated version of what I would have been talking about had things not changed yesterday. Are there any questions about it? And I don't see any hands. And if there aren't any, then I'm just going to keep rolling, Peter.
Yeah, no, I know that Winooski's been focusing heavily on trying to get a public policy more defined. I think it'd be important, but I don't have anything to say at this moment. So we can continue unless anyone else has comments.
Doesn't seem to be. But there are anyway. Okay.
Someone who wants to participate now or wants to indicate their willingness to have further influence on it.
Yeah, I'm not at this point, given what's happened, I'm not making any requests for actions. I mean, if there
Okay.
were thoughts or opinions, certainly there could be an action item. But I will have, I think, more concrete information to share in September.
Yeah, that sounds good because you have the meeting still to go to. Okay, sounds good.
So the next meeting of this august body would be September 26th. And the items that were in the package, I had inserted some materials from the State of the Lake report. This is really just informational. You know, the Basin program does these reports. And I tried to pull out things that were relevant to the Lamoille Basin. That's not quite how they report things at the Basin program. They do it by lake sectors or segments. And so there are some references to the Lamoille River, and there are also some references to the sector or section of the lake that it empties into, that you'll see some of the data. But you can go, the link was in the package and it's also here. If you Googled State of the Lake report, you would find it. But just a quick summary, you know, we're still all at work trying to lower phosphorus levels. In this report, it covers the entire basin. Some basins are seeing encouraging signs, and those are listed. And decent trends, reduced phosphorus loading. The Lamoille River shows a positive trend despite overall lake increases. That's from 2023. And something that I did get one question on at least is the real-time monitoring that takes place through a buoy. And I did send that link out to one person who'd asked, and I can see that others get it if you had that question. But Mallett's Bay, where the Lamoille mouth is counted, generally low phosphorus levels, positive sign for water quality as far as cyanobacteria, aquatic invasives, something of an issue. But that may be a little more removed than the Lamoille Basin. But anyway, I reported that. But if people had, if this was something that people wanted to hear about more regularly, then we can just perhaps get someone from the Basin program to give a report. And if the link that you've been given is enough, then we don't need to discuss it any further. But I thought it would be interesting. And it's also kind of interesting too, because there have been several years of these reports. And so you get the ability to compare conditions over time.
I think this is very important because I think a lot of times many groups get together and they really don't know who is monitoring, if there is any actual solid evidence, and looks like Lake Champlain Basin program is, and I don't think that's fully realized amongst many partners. And so this is great, and it should be highly promoted.
Peter, could I just make a plug for, and maybe some of you have received an email, but the Basin program sent out an email. I want to say it was maybe last week. It was a quick Google form. It's actually through their Vermont, was it the Citizen
Advisory Committee?
Advisory Committee, asking for everyone to provide input to that committee for their 2025 action plan. So I think I think the deadline to submit is tomorrow, the 26th. But it took me, I don't know, it took me a little while because I wrote something very specific, but they're just asking, you know, where our priorities should be. They tell you what they're thinking about, and then they're soliciting, you know, should there be additional things we should be thinking about, or integration of these priorities and so on. So I just recommend for folks that can, it's all of our lake, right? And it's all of our waters that we're trying to protect. And it's an opportunity for that committee, which is citizens of the state of Vermont and New York and the Basin, to actually take action and bring, well, it's the Vermont committee. So they bring that action plan to the governor and to the legislature next year. And So please just submit your comments to them by tomorrow. And I don't know, Dean, did
I
you get
have-
that email?
I've gotten emails regarding the advisory committee in the past, but I don't remember getting that one, and I think I would have, but that's, yeah.
Yeah, can we, Aaron,
It's-
can we share that with folks if you have it, the link?
Yep, I'll do that next.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, before we conclude, I was gonna ask Dean perhaps, in next month's agenda, when we looked over the agenda, I didn't comment on it before for today's agenda, and I don't want to edit it, but you have the opening dates for, opening rounds dated for the grant proposals.
So the schedule for,
Yeah, and I don't think if
it's,
maybe in the future, we also had the due dates listed next to it.
okay, so.
Because I think the due dates are probably for people who are applying, probably more important than the opening date. I mean, the opening dates are obviously very important, but I think the due dates would be great to have in there as well.
So I will amend that table so that it has the due dates when it's open and the due date. Yeah, it's about 5 weeks
Okay,
after each, but I'll get that changed next
I
time.
appreciate it.
Yep, sorry.
Yeah, no. Okay,
There was, let me just double check the comments because I see one.
sure, yeah. Yeah,
Okay, that's your AI, Peter.
yeah, no, it doesn't look like there's many, let's see,
Okay, and it was just.
takeaways.
She was, and then people noting that they were late.
Cool.
Hi, Dean. This is Ken. I'm sorry.
Ken.
Hi. Sorry, I was had some technical issues, but in any event, did you appoint me as a member or not?
Yes, Ken, yes, Ken, this is Ken Mink, who is the person who was shown in the table, who was an alternate, who's listed as the municipal rep. So he's moved up and Sarah has moved down to the alternate seat. This is Ken speaking, who wasn't around at the very beginning of the meeting, but I did see your name pop up. And then I didn't see it, and so I wasn't sure if you were still there, but hello, Ken.
Oh, thanks, Dean.
Okay, any other comments or discussions before we end the meeting? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to conclude our meeting for today?
I move we adjourn.
Brad Holden moves that we adjourn. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Thank you, Brent. Seconded. All right, all in favor of concluding this meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All opposed, say nay. And the ayes have it.
Thank you
I
all.
want to hear a nay one of these days. It'd be kind of funny.
Yeah.
Have a
Alrighty.
great day.
See you later.